Hey YouTube, my name's Terlyn and this video is going to be all about my experience getting diagnosed with endometriosis. The reason I'm sharing this story is because I had to fight like hell to get diagnosed, which I think is probably common with a lot of women, and I think it's also bullshit. So I had to fire doctors, hire new doctors, I had to push and demand, and I finally eventually was diagnosed with endometriosis. So I'm going to start right at the very beginning, and the very beginning is when I was a kid. My aunt, my mom's sister, had endometriosis, and she always had debilitating pain around her cycles, and it was kind of just well known amongst the women in my family that she suffered in that way. And so that it's in my genetic history, I guess. I got my first period when I was 13, and right away it was always painful. My cycles were very painful from the very beginning. And when I say painful, I mean I'm having to take Tylenol and Advil just to get through the day. And sometimes I can't even get through the day. It was so debilitating for me. I always bled very heavily, and I never really knew that that was abnormal. Between the ages of like 13 and 17, I would say I had no idea what I was doing, and I was basically always in pain every month. Once I started having sex, I was about 17, and it was always painful as well. So these were two things that were always painful for me, and I did not know that they weren't supposed to be painful. I don't want to discredit anybody who helped raise me, but I really felt like there was no conversation with me around these types of things and how they're supposed to feel. So I was kind of going into it blind, and I really had no idea that sex is not supposed to hurt and your periods are not supposed to hurt that bad. Fast forward to the time that I'm 21 and I got pregnant with a little boy and I had my son. So 3 months after I have my son, it's 2013, my partner and I at the time split up, and it was definitely a very traumatic experience for me, and I really believe that trauma can manifest as physical symptoms in the body. It's just my belief. You don't have to agree with me, that's fine, but I know that when that happened to me, and then when I started experiencing my next symptoms, they were really around the same time. I would say after I split up with my son's father, and the time that I started to feel the lump on my side, it was about 6 months. So one morning, it's 2014, I have my little boy, he's almost a year old, and I wake up in the morning and I have this weird feeling in my tummy, and I can see my belly is like flat on the left side, and then it has like a little like whoop, like a bump on the right side. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And so I pushed on it, and it was like, it pushed away, it moved, and then I was flat again, and I was like, what the fuck? I was obviously kind of like taken back by that and wondering like, what is that? So I go to my family doctor number one. So I go to him, and he tells me that he can't feel anything and that it's probably nothing to be concerned about. He basically just completely dismissed me and said he couldn't feel it. So I just left it at that. You know, at the time, I was so naive with doctors. I just trusted them innately, and I just believed everything that they said, and they're the experts, and so I just trusted him. And a couple of months go by, and I start to feel this dull, achy feeling on my right side where the lump is. So every morning I'm waking up, and I've got this lump, and I can push on it, and it moves away, and I can feel in my body like this weird feeling when it moves. And I'm having this dull, achy, right-sided pain. I tell my family about it. I'm trying to, you know, establish, okay, is this cancer? Am I dying? Like, what is happening to me? So I find a new doctor. So I go to the new doctor, and I kind of explain my symptoms and what I'm dealing with. And he feels around in my belly, and he's the first doctor who felt it as well. So he could feel it, and he said to me that he thought it was a distended bowel and that I would need surgery for the treatment of this distended bowel. It didn't really seem right to me. I didn't know what a distended bowel was or how that happens, but I was just thinking like, it didn't feel right. And at the time, I still didn't know. I wasn't sure if I had endometriosis. The back of my mind, I was kind of always thinking, like, do you have endo? Because I would get what they call endo belly, where your belly swells up so swollen and painful at certain times in your cycle, mostly around your period or also around ovulation. I would get very swollen. And there was other things kind of like leading me to believe maybe it was endometriosis. So when the second doctor diagnoses me with possible distended bowel, I didn't really believe him. I was kind of like, well, maybe that's what it is. So I go to my dad and I'm like, hey dad, this is what he said, what do you think? And he was just like, that sounds weird, you should get another opinion. After I talked to my dad about it, I was like, I need a second opinion. Now, between that time and getting a second opinion, I met my now husband, and we start dating, and obviously we're intimate with each other, and it hurts a lot. It hurts every time. It hurts to the point where I have to stop halfway through because I'm in physical pain. So, and that's not normal, right? I didn't know this at the time, but now I know that it's not supposed to hurt. So I'm just going along with it, and he's so gracious about it, you know, and so then I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna find a new doctor. So I go to the doctor and I'm like, look, these are the symptoms. I have this weird lump on my belly. I have this dull, achy feeling in my right side, and it really hurts when I have sex. And also, we had been, after about a year, we'd been trying to conceive. I couldn't get pregnant. So all of these things together, she orders an ultrasound. She palpates my belly and she cannot feel a lump to save her life. She swears there's nothing in there. She can't feel it. And she says to me, maybe it's an issue with my aorta and that they'll do an ultrasound. So I go for my ultrasound and everything looks totally normal. They tell me that I pass with flying colors. They do blood work on me. There's no signs of infection. There's no raised levels of hormones or anything. Everything looked totally normal, so she said. So I kind of just keep going with my life, you know, I just keep trying to get pregnant. I keep dealing with this right-sided dull, achy feeling that comes and goes, and I just keep living my life. A couple of months later, I downloaded the app called Flow, and it's basically a period tracker, and it also tracks your ovulation. So I download the app, and when you download that app, it gives you like this little questionnaire at the beginning. There's like 45 questions that you answer all about your life and your history and your sex life and your menstrual cycle history, all that stuff. So I get to one of the questions and it says, basically you can answer them like sometimes, almost, and never, or often, sometimes, always, never, whatever, like that. And there was a question, do you feel pain during intercourse? And I answered always, because at some point in the intercourse, I always feel pain. And so, and when you answer, you click your answer, it shows like the stats, the percentage of women who also answered yes, no, sometimes, whatever. And 1% of women answered always. And that was the first time in my life that I was looking at my phone and I was like, I'm 1% of the women? It just never occurred to me that there's women out there that are having sex and it just feels great all the time. I had no idea, and I felt so stupid at that time. Like, I genuinely thought that this is supposed to hurt, or that it does hurt. It hurts all women. I don't know why I thought that, but that was like the moment for me where I was like, I have endometriosis. And I started looking up painful intercourse and what that meant and heavy periods, and I saw this laundry list on Google of all of the symptoms of endometriosis, and every single symptom I had. And so I was just like, all of a sudden I just kind of switched in my mind where I was like, I know what this pain is. This pain in my side is endometriosis. I need to get this treated. So I go back to my female doctor, and she tells me that she's going to refer me to an OBGYN who will perform a test on me called an HSG to see inside my pelvis. It can see adhesions. It can see if you have blocked fallopian tubes. There's all these different things that this test can see. And this doctor would also perform a laparoscopy if I went with him to investigate further. My female doctor and this new OBGYN both did not think that it was necessary for me to have a laparoscopy, which this is where I started to really have to develop a backbone with doctors and say, like, fuck that. Like, I'm getting this test because I want this test, you know? And anyway, so I go to this doctor, and right away, he had terrible bedside manner. I've obviously been trying to conceive for a while. I'm in physical pain. It's affecting my life, my quality of life, because I'm trying to be intimate with my husband and it hurts me and it's not supposed to. So, you know, there's some things where they're really serious life things for me, and I'm going to this doctor and trusting in him that he will take care of me. And he gets through his little bit of a verbal dialogue with me and he says, "You can take your pants off now." And I shit you not, I had no idea I was even gonna be doing that at all at this appointment. And I was like, why? And he was like, well, we need to do a physical exam to rule anything out. And I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, okay, I want your nurse in here. So he goes and gets the nurse, and then he closes the curtain and stays in the room with me while I get undressed, which I was so uncomfortable with. And anyway, I get undressed, I get on the table, he does the physical exam. And it was really traumatizing for me. This total stranger, I didn't anticipate, which I should have probably anticipated a pelvic exam during a first OBGYN appointment, but I just didn't. And so it was awful. I really hate physical pelvic exams with total fucking strangers. Don't we all? So he does the physical and he can tell, he said he could feel that, like, when he was doing his thing, it was hurting me. And so he was like, you do have some signs that there might be adhesions in your abdomen. We'll do this HSG test. And then he writes me a prescription for Clomid because I haven't conceived. And I was like, whoa, like, hold up. Why? I don't want to take this medication. First of all, I know a lot about this medication and it is really intense for the woman, and it has all these side effects that are really intense, and like, I don't want to take this medication. And also, you have no idea what's wrong with me. So why are you prescribing me medications to make me hyperovulate? Like, it just didn't make sense. And I was like, I don't want your medicine. I want this test. So we go to do the HSG. I have a video about my experience with that. I'm not going to get too far into the details, but it was terrible and traumatizing as well. So we do the HSG, it comes back inconclusive. They didn't see anything wrong in my pelvis, they say, which again is so confusing. I'm still having this deep, achy, dull pain in my side, as well as occasionally I'm having these really intense ripping sensations, which is new for me, but it felt like sometimes I'll be like just in the grocery store walking around or on a walk outside with my husband, and I just feel this like rip inside of me on that side, and it's like I have to stop and grab onto something and like breathe deeply to get through it because it is so painful. And so I know something is wrong with me, and I was like, fuck this doctor. I go back to my female doctor. I say to hell with him, he's out of here. I actually reported him to the board because of the way that he spoke to me and how he handled my case and how he was on the phone during my procedures and shit. It was just, anyway, I get a new doctor. I was like, I'm never going back to that guy. Get me a new doctor. So she refers me to a new OBGYN in a different city with a different clinic, and I go to have my appointment with him, and I'm like, look, I really need you to feel this lump. Some doctors can feel it, some doctors can't feel it. And he palpates my belly, and his eyes lit up, and he looks at me and he said, I feel it. And like the relief that washed over me in that moment, I can't even describe it, because up until that point I'd been so dismissed. And so he said he felt it, and I was so relieved. And he said to me, I think it's a hernia. And he says it's a Spigelian hernia, which when I looked it up later, I realized that it really only happens in like 50-year-old men. So it's so unlikely that that's what it would be. But at the moment, I grasped onto that so hard, and I was like, it's a hernia! We know what it is, it's a hernia. I'm calling my dad like, it's a hernia! And like, we're happy about this, even though it's like a major surgery and we're not happy about a hernia. But I was just so relieved to like have some kind of answer. So he says to me that he's also going to consult a general surgeon because it could also be appendicitis, because where it's located is around the area that the appendix is, so it could possibly be appendicitis. So like, we've been diagnosed with a lot of shit now. Like, it's been lots of different things, and no one actually knows what it is. So I say to him, I want a laparoscopy. I need that surgery. I need to know for sure. I'm still not getting pregnant. I'm having painful periods, painful sex, this pain on my right side that's just like a mystery pain. And So I go to the hospital after my appointment with him and he thinks it's a hernia. I meet with a new doctor who's the general surgeon who would be performing the appendectomy if it was appendicitis. He felt my belly and he couldn't feel anything. And he says that it sounds like it could be chronic appendicitis, and if it was a hernia, he doesn't think it's a hernia because a hernia would bulge further out of my abdomen than what I was describing. So fast forward a couple months, I'm going for my surgery and I have my laparoscopy with the main doctor, and the general surgeon's also present just in case they have to take my appendix at the same time. Turns out, wasn't appendicitis, wasn't a hernia. I go under, I wake up, the doctor tells me he's not gonna tell me anything for a few days because I'm all groggy from the anesthetic, and he'll call me on Monday. So I get the phone call on Monday. It was July 7th, I want to say. I don't really remember. It was the beginning of July. I get the phone call and he tells me that my right ovary was completely encased in endometrial adhesions and attached to my abdominal wall. So my right ovary was encased in scar tissue and stuck on my pelvic wall on the inside of me. And that is why I feel the lump, and that's why I feel the intense pain and the dull, achy sensations. And I gotta be honest, like, I said to him, I fucking knew it. He said, you have stage 3 endometriosis. And the first thing I said was, I fucking knew it. And I did know it. And I was really glad that I pushed to receive a laparoscopic surgery. He told me that I would have a 0% chance of conceiving naturally due to fully blocked fallopian tubes, which if you watch any of my other videos, you probably already know that. So at this point, I had been diagnosed with, let's just go over all of the diagnoses. So the first one was the doctor couldn't feel it, it was probably nothing. The second one didn't know. The third one said maybe an issue with my aorta. Another one said that a possible distended bowel. I heard hernia, and I heard chronic appendicitis. So we're at 6 things where a doctor either doesn't know what it is, can't tell me, or comes up with some crazy idea, when really at the end of the day, it was endometriosis. And it was really validating for me to hear from the doctor after the surgery that I had this condition, because I always had suspected that something was going on and that it was probably endometriosis, and I had been dismissed by so many doctors. And so it was definitely validating, but it's also really sad news because this condition affects so many aspects of your life. If you have endometriosis, you know that it comes with fatigue and bloating and pain, and it definitely affects your quality of life. So as much as it was really great to hear the diagnosis be confirmed, it was also very sad, and I did go through a process of grief afterwards, mostly because I was given a 0% chance of ever having another child naturally. I wanted to share this story because I know that there are other women out there. I've even had women leave me comments saying that they also have their ovary attached, which at the time I was so alone. I did not have any idea that other women go through this. So it's been such a relief to connect with other women who can relate to me, even though we relate on this subject that is so sad and devastating. I just want to mention, if you remember at the beginning of my story with the first male doctor, with the male OBGYN who was on his phone in the HSG who had terrible bedside manner, he wanted to prescribe me Clomid, which would have made my ovaries hyperovulate, which would have made my pain 10 times worse. So I have an ovary stuck inside my pelvis, and because that doctor didn't do a definitive diagnosis on me, he was just gonna give me medicine and send me on my way. And that would have been hell for me. I still wouldn't have gotten pregnant. I would have had terrible side effects, and then I can't even imagine the pain my ovary would have been in had I taken Clomid. So just let this video be a support to you that you deserve to stick up for yourself. You can fire doctors and say you want new doctors. You can report doctors for treating you terrible if they do. And as much as I hope that you are on a journey where everybody is supporting you and you love your doctors, I know that that's not the case for everybody. I know that you're out there and you're like, yeah, I fucking hate my doctor, or I just don't believe doctors at all anymore. And this has definitely affected my ability to trust doctors, but it's also taught me that there are good doctors out there who will listen to their patients. So keep fighting for that diagnosis. If you are not diagnosed yet and you have all of the classic signs or even just a couple of the symptoms, there's a very good chance that you're dealing with endometriosis. This affects millions of women in the world, and I think the more we talk about it, the more connection we can make with each other and the less alone we feel. So that's really my main motivation for making these videos, is connecting with you on the other side of the screen and hoping that you're gonna find something valuable in my story. I had to fight like no other fight in my life to get this diagnosis, and now that I have it, I can pursue excision surgery, which I do have coming up. I'm so grateful that I am where I am now, and it's actually been amazing because this whole journey of finding out this diagnosis has taught me so much about myself that I have such a strong backbone now. Not just with doctors, but with everybody all the time. I don't take anybody's shit anymore. And I don't know why, but years ago I was totally taking people's shit and trusting everybody, and it's just really honestly made me a better person. So I feel really grateful to be able to be sharing my story with you, and I really appreciate the fact that you're watching this video and that you're supporting my channel. If you want to go ahead and subscribe and like, I would totally appreciate that too. If not, that's okay. I will see you in my next video. Anyway, yeah, that's my story. That's really all I have to share with you today, and until next time, I will see you next time.